Hi guys, I'm Mike, this is F1 Fanatics and welcome back to another F1 Fanatics F1 Weekly News Show live stream. Obviously, when it's race weekends, we go live after every FP1 podcast. Nice to see some people going there. Fergus, thumbnail is questionable. Yes, I was having some issues with the webcam. It took the picture of the kind of weird thumbnail, but the other webcam I was trying to use wasn't working. I don't know. It was weird on that front, but we've got a normal thumbnail in terms of that from there. Liam Talks F1 is here as well. Thank you for joining, guys. As always, just let me tweet out the fact that we are live, and then we will jump into the news headlines for this week. Hope you're all well on this Friday and enjoyed FP1. It was some interesting things happening, everyone. Valtteri Bottas hit a pigeon. Poor pigeon. But yes, we will certainly get into that. Right, tweet is now live. We are good to go. So the main story probably came from yesterday, actually, which is the FIA from Spa onwards will be getting rid of the team's party mode, shall we say, in terms of the engines, looking to restrict Mercedes' pace. Lewis Hamilton obviously was quoted coming out saying that the FIA are always trying to find a way of slowing Mercedes down, and it won't work how they expect. Obviously, Mercedes will come up fighting. But yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, I saw Josh Rock's tweeting as well that, you know, this isn't necessarily just affecting Mercedes. It's affecting stuff like Scenario 7 for McLaren, which was obviously a positive as well. Hello to Nico, who's pondering in chat. Just stopped by to say hi. I have to be on a call at work for 5 minutes. Hi, Nico. Thanks for jumping in from there. Good luck with your work call. Joshua Allen going to get a podium this weekend. And it's back, you know, me and Josh constant with Albon all weekend. Abe, welcome to the chat. What's that neon paint on the pads on the car's rear in practice? So that is the Flow Viz paint, usually when teams are trying to look about how the airflow travels over the course of the car, and they will put it somewhere specifically. Obviously, it looked like it was on, I think you're talking about Daniel Kvyat's rear wing, wasn't it? It might have been on a few, but yes, they look at the kind of how the air travels on there, and it's for all the aerodynamicists to kind of get geeky about and look and make sure that everything is working and the airflow is traveling over a car how they expect it to do so. So that is what that paint is, Abe. But yes, thoughts on, for you guys in chat, what's the thoughts on the engine modes being banned? Do you think it will bring Mercedes down closer to there, because their qualifying mode over the past couple of years definitely has been a little bit of an extra edge, an extra margin working in their favor? But yeah, it's the FIA trying to, and we noticed this over the years of F1, they always trying to kind of step in of a team dominating to try and stop them a little bit more. So this does very much feel like it's targeted at Mercedes. Whether it has that much influence on Mercedes whatsoever is probably yet to be decided. In other news, obviously, Racing Point again, I decided not to go with the thumbnail of Checo being back because, well, I think the last 3 weeks have been about Racing Point in terms of the F1 Weekly News Show. But yes, Checo is back, tested negative for COVID-19. He's back in that Racing Point car. He'll probably be very happy. Was talking about that the tyre degradation and managing the tyres is going to be important this weekend, which is obviously Sergio Perez's real strength. So the question is, will Sergio Perez be great this weekend? Be interesting. He certainly will be on for a thing. A lot of people are predicting maybe this will be the weekend that Perez gets a podium, but there will certainly have to be some things that fall into place for Racing Point for Checo to do that. But yes, it's good to see Checo back in the car. And, you know, Nico Hulkenberg, he did well last weekend, but now is probably locked in negotiations with teams whether he can make it a full-time return to Formula One for the 2021 season. And that's obviously probably another news story. I think Ross Brawn was saying that Mercedes considered Nico Hulkenberg in 2013 coming into the car. Obviously, I think Nick Heidfeld has been rumoured for that seat before in the past. And we'll get onto that, Josh, when we're talking about FP1. But yes, I think the double German lineup was very appealing for Mercedes, but they decided to go for Lewis Hamilton, and I bet they certainly don't regret that decision now that he's won 5 world championships with them and starting this season very strong, looking like at V6. But yes, there was a hilarious tweet that I saw on Twitter. Josh's comment in chat of pray silence for that poor bird. Yes, Bottas thinking he hit a bird, and I saw a tweet going, FIA launching a scheme to try and slow down Mercedes. Not only are they introducing the engine restrictions to it, they are also throwing pigeons at Mercedes cars to try and slow them down. Honestly, the things you see, and like Bottas was like, I think I hit a bird, but the camera pan behind him, there were feathers everywhere. So yeah, I think he definitely hit that bird, certainly on that front. But yeah, it was an interesting FP1. Everyone was running different programs, different paces in terms of that. The Haas, Roman Grosjean, they'll be happy. Grosjean was 6th quickest in a session and were up there. The Ferraris, probably key here. Sebastian Vettel was a lot better or a lot closer to Charles Leclerc after Ferrari found a problem on Sebastian Vettel's chassis after Silverstone, that they've given him a new chassis for this weekend. So think of that what you will. The conspiracy theorists will be saying that Ferrari was sabotaging Sebastian Vettel. But yes, it looks like that Sebastian is a lot closer and maybe a lot more competitive this weekend with Charles Leclerc. So it'd be interesting actually to see where those Ferraris are. John T. James, Stefan Janssen be like, so we absolutely. Yeah, hit a deer, but no, hit a pigeon in terms of that front. There's certainly probably going to be memes and pictures for kind of with memories for that poor pigeon. Roy Nissany got a run out in FP1. Obviously, a lot of controversy, not controversy, but obviously everyone knows that Roy Nissany is heavily backed financially. They've already given Jack Aitken a run out in FP1. I don't know if it's something that they're going to give all their juniors, so we'll expect to see maybe Dan Ticktum later in the season in an FP1 season. But yes, no surprise that Roy Nissany has got at least one run out this season. It's probably somewhere in his contract of being an academy driver, and he probably does support the team a little bit financially in that aspect with the financial backing that Nissany brings. But man, did okay. I think it was about 3 or 2 tenths off Nicholas Latifi in the end, which isn't horrible. And he spun as well. So yeah, not bad from Roy Nissany considering the pace that Williams shows. Although, yeah, FP2 is going to be really fascinating. Obviously, that's when we start seeing qualifying runs and we start to get an idea of where the teams are lining up this weekend. Traditionally, a very predictable weekend because of having pre-season testing here. But already that kind of increased track temperature, Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton already complaining about tyre temperatures, or just the tyre wear already. He had some significant wear on those tyres, and quite a lot of the cars were seeing quite a lot of graining. So potentially maybe we're looking at another 2-stop race here, which obviously Lewis Hamilton did last week, that 2-stop races are better for F1. Karun Chandok was talking about having a minimum 2 stops. I know it's something on the channel that Ash has always spoken about, of maybe using every compound, the soft, medium and hard, something quite easy to kind of implement on that front. And I actually think it would be very good because it adds in another element. It adds in more human elements. It's another pit stop. Something can go wrong. It's tyre management. It's being on the right compound at the right time. Different strategies. Who goes on what compound at what time? Yes, certainly interesting. Obviously, we saw it last weekend with teams starting on different tyres, and certainly on that front. So yeah, would be a very interesting on that front. And I definitely think that would be a positive for F1 if it was a minimum of 2 stops, that's for sure. Albon can again get into Q3 this weekend. Yeah, Albon was talking on the radio actually in FP1 saying he's very happy with the balance. Slow on the straights, but happy with the balance. But it believes, I think Karun was saying in chat, that the engine modes were turned down with the Red Bulls obviously in engine saving mode. So as always, you don't really see the real pace of a team in until qualifying, and also until race, really, essentially as well, because the race pace of the Red Bull has been a lot better than what it's maybe necessarily shown in practice, so to speak. Also, probably an interesting one, chat. We'll carry on the debate with what was going on in terms of Sky commentary. Karun had an idea, and it's the first kind of reverse grid idea that I've gone, you know what? I wouldn't be opposed to it. I was opposed to reverse grid qualifying. Didn't like that sprint race because I like qualifying. I enjoy that. I think it's a great part of the weekend, and it adds values to weekends like Singapore and Monaco on a normal F1 season when we've got the street circuits. Those kind of qualifying laps are really kind of fantastic to watch from there. And also having a sprint race as maybe a difference to a race weekend. Obviously that would never be interest on there. But the talk of replacing FP3 with qualifying, and then later in that afternoon having a sprint race with half points going into the championship with a reverse grid on there, that is certainly something that would be interesting and would mean like drivers like George Russell maybe have a chance of scoring more points. Half the distance. I think they were saying like a 45-minute race encapsulates the younger audience, or an audience with a shorter attention span. Going from there, Abe going, but the points of the sprint race should not affect the main championship. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed with it being joined in, because then, there's a little bit of driver skill. There's teams having to balance over the course of 2 weekends. I actually think that introducing something in the main championship would be good. If you had a separate championship, which is what Crofty was suggesting, or just a sprint race with no points, there is no point to it. It's got to affect the F1 championship in some way. And I don't think that you have a sprint championship because that is too gimmicky. That's not great for me for that front. I do think half points contributing to the main championship would add in an interesting element. But essentially, all these things of reverse grids and stuff that go in are gimmicks because they feel there's a product with the main Grand Prix that isn't right. If there are people who want the shorter form of races, then I guess, Formula E, but I don't know if they're maybe trying to see, well, Formula E has had a successful audience. Do we try and say, we're Formula One, we've got the main race, but we're also going to offer a 45-minute race, which is more attuned to maybe a Formula E style audience that would add interesting on that front. It's certainly, it's certainly an interesting one up for debate, I think. Here in chat, what would your thoughts be necessarily on anything having a sprint race that affects the main championship? Obviously, Abe says that he would prefer it not to affect the main championship. It's an interesting one. Essentially, F1 isn't broken to me. The issue with F1 is you have one team that is significantly outright in front compared to the others. The two-stop strategy, I think, is a genuine one that they can improve F1, and I think that would be interesting, certainly on that front, using all 3 tyre compounds in a weekend. But with the budget cap and with the rule regulations changing, with the simplification of aero in the 2022 season, for me, I think that will happen, and the reverse grid, maybe that takes a little bit more away from the F2 and the F3 that's been growing in popularity. Obviously, F1 will always be the main thing, but, if you're then getting 6 races in a weekend of 2 F1 races, 2 F2 races, 2 F3 races, it's a lot of commitment to ask from people. And so, it'll may be difficult from there. But I suppose if you're a race nut, you're going to go from there. Josh Revel, Josh was sending me messages about this, going, well, if you're going to go for F1 gimmicks, why not go all in? So just equip cars with homing launchers with 1 rocket per race. Rogo would probably blow himself up. got to spice up the racing somehow. Oh, geez. Look, I don't actually think there's too much of an issue. I think people maybe create issues in F1. You're never going to make everyone happy. But if we look at the midfield racing this season, it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. There's unpredictability. There's great on-track action. There's overtaking. You know, it really is a close-fought battle. The real problem with Formula One at the moment is Mercedes and the fact that no one can match Mercedes. And they are bringing in a set of rules and regulations. Well, obviously, like we said, main story of today was that turning down the party engine mode, you know, to get things to try and bring it closer. Or I believe what they were saying is it's difficult to police the party mode at the moment and to make sure that what teams are doing are entirely right. So if they do it with keeping it one engine mode, it's a lot easier for the FIA to police and make sure that the people or the teams are doing things correct. In theory, that sounds right, but I'm not entirely sure how they police it either way. It does seem a very clear intent to kind of reduce Mercedes' advantage that they currently have, which obviously is what the FIA historically always done to a dominant team. They will ban something that is making that team dominant, and Mercedes at the moment do have a clear engine advantage. Talking about engine, and obviously two teams that will be powered by Mercedes next year will be Williams and McLaren, and both, after stating their intent to appeal, or you know, at least consider the appeal, pulled out of the appeal against Racing Point's verdict last season. And make of that what you will, but considering the fact that they're both powered by Mercedes, there seems a little bit less of a coincidence there that Mercedes might have had a part to say, or McLaren and Williams were like, we don't want to pee off the guys who are supplying us an engine, where Ferrari and Renault will go ahead with the appeal as planned. So yeah, certainly interesting on that. Abe Pander, why don't they bring softer compounds every weekend if does not suit the Mercs? Not necessarily that. I think bringing softer compounds to force two-stop races, I wouldn't be opposed to that, because obviously it led to brilliant there. But did it? The problem is doing that softer compound is it works for one weekend. It works for a one-off, but then teams like Mercedes, they get the advantage. They see the data, they've got the resources and the understanding to kind of put all of that into place and to go, you know what, we're going to get on top of that problem now, and they will be better. So the deficit in terms of the tyres being an issue for Mercedes will get slimmer and slimmer over time. So I don't think it's necessarily the softer compound, but a two-stop strategy certainly would be interesting on that, because yeah, the softness of the compound I don't think's really the issue, because the teams get so good at adapting and they realize that a one-stop is the optimal one. So they always will find a way of driving and competing to make the one-stop work. So if you make a two-stop mandatory with saying that they have to use all three compounds, that is the easy way around it without going on a softer compounds. But actually, guys, it's been a pretty quiet week in terms of the news. I guess, you know, it's just full on with these back-to-back weekends. There isn't really times to develop. There isn't really times kind of for everything coming in. And so, yeah, it's a little bit of a quieter one in terms of news. But unless, obviously, you guys have anything to do in chat or have any questions in chat to kind of go for, we probably will make it a shorter F1 weekly news show this week, because that's realistically what the news has been this week. It's been quite quiet, other than, yeah, obviously Mercedes engine, go from there. Perez said his seat is safe. Oh, has that just come in? That is certainly an interesting one on Sergio Perez. Maybe negotiations. It seemed a pretty dead cert that Sebastian Vettel was going to get that seat. So does that mean Lance Stroll is going bye-bye? Because he's been talking more recently of He obviously doesn't want his dad to fire him, but would understand. Like I said, yeah, he was Abe. Lance was misquoted in that. But yes, definitely there. Hello, Mr. Storm. Thanks for bringing in useful in the chat there on that front. But yeah, Checo being confident about his seat. Something's definitely changed there. I don't know whether it would have been Lance's performance over the last 2 British Grand Prix, which weren't exactly standout in the gap. Go for that. Nice, Mr. Storm. You say random letters. Well, thank you for the random R today. I do appreciate that. But yeah, that's the Racing Point C is very interesting on that front. Yeah, Lance, like I said last week, telling you guys to go and watch his interview, I think, with a Dutch outlet. But early on in the season, Lance Stroll was very confident about talking about his seat for next season. And, you know, even when the Sebastian Vettel rumours came about, he was very confident, thinking that it would be him partnering Sebastian Vettel if that was the case. But as things currently stand, he's kind of got less and less confident. And it looks like Sergio Perez is getting more and more confident on that front. So, obviously, everyone presumes that Lance Stroll would never lose his seat because his dad owns the team. But the interesting thing here is Lawrence Stroll doesn't own the team outright. He is the majority holder, but he's head of a consortium. And as part of that consortium, I would assume that, you know, there are board meetings and there are stuff with how to use that money. You know, he can't say if his son isn't performing, he can't keep going to them, keep investing in this project Racing Point, so you can fund my son. If it was just Lawrence Stroll who owns Racing Point and owns Aston Martin, I would say bang on, you've got more of a chance for doing that. When he out and out owned Prema, I think that was just a sole Lawrence purchase. But it's the fact that it's Lawrence Stroll led consortium, you know, so that means that it is other people's money being invested into that as well. So therefore, Lance isn't as safe as what people think. And in interviews, it does look like go from there. But Aditya thinks the deal with Seb has fallen through. I mean, that is very much a very interesting point indeed. Maybe it has, but everyone seemed that it was a done deal, obviously, with him going off with Otmar to the petrol station. Ted Kravitz had reported that it was basically a done deal. They were just holding off the announcement because Checo tested positive for COVID. But, you know, Sky Sports have been known to kind of get leaks wrong in terms of when Australia was cancelled. They said the race was on at like the early hours of the morning in terms of that front. Josh doing his best Lawrence Stroll impression with Lance's seat in jeopardy. I'm extremely angry. And there. Katie, welcome into the chat. I know you probably got this on in the background with work. So thanks for jumping in a comment. But yes, Carlos Sainz's helmet for this weekend for his home Grand Prix is awesome. That is an absolutely brilliant helmet design. Definitely enjoy that from there. Tab 11, what a difference will the party ban mode make? So we spoke about that a little bit earlier in this live stream so far, Tab 11, but I'm not entirely sure, if I'm honest, because it affects all ones. I think what the FIA are probably hoping for, that it reduces the qualifying advantage that Mercedes have over the rest of the field, i.e. being a second clear of everyone. So that is what I think the proposed hope it is on that front. But what will actually happen, no idea. So there, John T. James, qualifying idea, split into 5 12-minute sessions. Each driver gets to record 3 laps in each session max. All 5 fastest laps are converted into their average lap time, and the grid is set that way. Very interesting. Very interesting on that. I actually don't have a problem with the qualifying format as it is. I think the only problem with the qualifying format as it is the fact that, well, Mercedes are so quick. if the grid was actually closer together, I think we've actually fallen onto a really great qualifying format. And if you, I mentioned it before, Moto Meerkat did a great kind of video on the qualifying formats over the years. And if you look, they've tried a lot of these ideas, the one-shot qualies and stuff, and playing around with it, and, the best time in a session as well. They've played around with a lot of separate ideas, and this is definitely the best one they've come up today. It doesn't mean that it's perfect, but it certainly means like I think we're in a pretty good place with it and going. What's the weather forecast for this weekend? If Merck have more tyre issues, Checo might push either one of them for a podium spot. The weather report for this weekend, Josh, is hot. Similar sort of temperatures to what the UK experienced last weekend. Obviously, they're on the harder compound, but from early signs in FP1, Mercedes looked like they were already struggling with tyre degradation. I read somewhere that Lawrence went to contract recognition board, so what they can do with Perez's contract. Seems like they can't buy out his contract. Seems interesting. Centre net, Stephen Gibb. It's just to help fan favourite Max Verstappen. It could be in terms of on there. I think it's not necessarily. Max Verstappen is obviously driving superb and it is the closest, but I think it doesn't do F1 any favours. I think you're okay having a dominant team in F1 if those top two drivers are fighting each other. But with Valtteri Bottas being so far off Lewis Hamilton, FIA probably want to make it less boring than Lewis Hamilton just dominating every race, because I'm sorry, Bottas is in no way a title contender in terms. I saw Sean did a video yesterday, the F1 word, going, is Spain a must win already for Bottas for the championship? Hey, I said it, British Grand Prix turn 1, that was when Bottas conceded the championship. Not many times do you get like a sniff from Lewis Hamilton, and Bottas got a better start and was side by side with the inside line going into turn 1, and he just kind of pathetically gave it up for me in terms of that front. So you can't be a world championship contender if you're not prepared to risk it. Go from there. Ewok from Eda, silly gimmicks won't help F1. Yeah, that's fair enough. Go from there. Just change the regulations. That's what they're doing in terms of that. Mercedes don't even use all the modes to save engine life. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of engine management in that. I think FIA are just looking to kind of make it simplified. I think that's FIA's almost ethos at the moment. They're trying to make F1 more simple. The engineers and technicians are adding in all these complicated modes, complicated, issues, or engine modes, aero side of things. Obviously, Ferrari last year, in terms of how much oil they were injecting into the engine, it makes it very difficult for the FIA police and keep hold of. So if they have one simple just one engine mode, then it does pretty much make it, they can easily see when teams aren't doing that. And but I suppose it probably does make things a little bit more of an issue, I think, for the midfield teams in there. Like someone said, scenario 7 for McLaren also bites the dust with this new, obviously, mode or regulation change from the FIA, or it was a letter written, it was something like that, but go from there. But yes, I think we've probably had a good chat and a round up everything on there. I'll give a last opportunity for you guys to let me know anything, whether you want me to discuss anything. If not, I will round up, obviously, this episode of the F1 Weekly News Show, another live stream, another great live stream, some great questions and great discussions in chat from there. Josh getting his classic hashtag Albon podium to kind of round things off. But yes, we'll be in for obviously the usual over the weekend, the qualifying live streams going straight after qualifying, and obviously the race live stream as well with our race reaction and quali race reaction. Go from there. Abe Pandea, Albon to Q3. I think Albon, certainly how he's talking about this weekend in the car, I think he certainly looks like he will get into Q3 again this weekend. But again, it's very interesting to see. We don't know where anybody will be until that qualifying happens on that front. But guys, it's been a brilliant chat, and thank you so much for there. If you have watched this live stream, you've enjoyed the live stream, do drop us a thumbs up if you've liked it. If you're new around here as well, drop us a subscribe. Do very much appreciate that, and we will see you tomorrow for the qualifying live reaction stream. So thank you guys, but for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.